This episode, we are going to look at recent speaking questions. And there's a screenshot in front of me, and this is from a student, Nakisani. And she said, most, if not all, of the questions that were in the exam are in this list. Also, I looked at them yesterday. I just finished my speaking test. Okay, so this is from a recent student. So let's jump straight into it. We have number one, part one, the interview. What is your full name? Can I see your ID? Where are you from? Do you work or study? Is money important to you? Did you save money when you were young? Have you ever given money to the children? I guess that's children in need or beggars. Do you usually wear a watch? What kinds of watches do you like to wear? Have you ever received a watch as a gift? Interesting. Now, hopefully, you will have remembered some of the techniques that I've shared before, and these techniques come straight from the Speaking Confidence course. And it's a good opportunity to show you how these techniques can be employed. For example, we have the whole construction of the question, do you usually wear a watch? Wear a watch. Now, we want to get that phrase back into our reply when we reply to the examiner. Yes, I frequently wear a watch. Yeah? I hardly ever wear a watch. But if we do it like this, we reflect the tense and we've got the correct construction, wear a watch. Now, I might seem as though I'm overemphasizing this, but it's important, especially for these warm-up questions, because the warm-up questions, once we get past this, once we sort of like dispatch this, we get to the next part, the examiner is going to know what kind of level we're at, so we don't want to mess it up. We don't want to sort of like start off with a bad impression. Also, it's going to help you with your confidence. So, do you usually wear a watch? Yes, almost every day I wear a watch. I find it useful, and personally, I prefer to be a punctual person. So, wearing a watch is quite important to me. Can you see? We just develop this answer. Next one. What kinds of watches do you like to wear? Well, I like to wear metal watches because I enjoy having the weight on my wrist, and I think it kind of transmits a lot of authority and respect and formality. When I was younger, I used to wear ones with a Velcro strap because I thought they were trendy and fashionable. So yeah, I've got a strong affinity to watches. Yeah, just a little conclusion there, because maybe the examiner doesn't know you've finished, and so just round it off there. Also, I used another strategy that's in the Speaking Confidence course. I referred back to the past. I used to wear watches with Velcro straps because I thought they were trendy, fashionable. Yeah? Have you ever received a watch as a gift? No, I've never received. We've got the present perfect in the question. Let's reflect that back to the examiner. No, I've never received a watch as a gift. However, I've seen it happen a lot in movies. I think it was on Forrest Gump where the main actor, he got a watch that was passed down from generation to generation. However, me personally, no. There's no family heirloom. There's no antique watch going through the family. And I've never received one as a gift either. Yeah? Just going back to the question there, because I recognized I kind of went slightly off topic, but I rescued it. I brought it back. And plus, it wasn't a massive divergence. I wasn't talking about giraffes in the Sahara Desert, which I got as a gift as a safari tour or whatever. No, I just went slightly off topic, Just brought it back. Moving on. QCAD, describe a magazine you enjoy reading. You should say what it is, how often you read it, what you learn from it, why you like it. Now, if you're like me, you've probably never bought, probably haven't bought a magazine for a long time. So, what do we do in this situation? Well, here's what I would do. Unfortunately, I can't tell you about a magazine because it's been a long time since I've read a magazine or bought one. The reason is because I get most of my media, most of my reading material online nowadays. So I'll tell you of like a magazine website, if that's okay. Examiner nods. Now I'll say, right, the magazine or the online site I'd like to tell you about is the Daily Mash, and it has ridiculous stories, and I read it from time to time. It's about satire, and it just takes current events and puts a ridiculous spin on it. So yeah, I'd probably read it every couple of days or so, and if I read it more, or if I read more articles, I have to pay for it. So that's usually when I stop. What do I learn from it? To be honest, I don't learn that much from it. Perhaps it gives me a different perspective on the current events, a more ridiculous, light-hearted and funny side of the events. And also, it kind of keeps me in contact with the UK because nowadays I live outside of the UK and most of the stories are UK related. And what's just an interesting point is that it's written in newspaper style, but the content is borderline ridiculous. So there's an interesting contrast there. And I think that's probably the reason why I like it, is because of the contrast, the satire, the approach, and it's a little bit more light-hearted. So that's my description of an online magazine, I guess, and I hope you liked it. So there, you probably heard the contrasts. I worked through each bullet point and I developed the answer and I tried to make it as full as possible. Also, I kind of hopefully shared a useful technique for what happens when you can't directly answer it. I admitted that I couldn't directly answer it, but I kind of twisted it round and said an online magazine, so I'm not exactly completely changing the topic to something that I want to talk about. It's still a magazine, it's just online. So, discussion. Do you think headlines are important? Yes, I think headlines are vitally important. And the reason is because they should give you an overview about what's happening or what's going to be told in the article. Also, they can hook you in, and in fact, I think nowadays they've gotten to the point where they're so important that they get negatively called clickbait and other terms like that. So I think they are important, and in fact, overly important. Which is more important, fashionable or advertising news? That's an interesting question. To be honest, it's a bit difficult to get what you mean by fashionable news or advertising news. I guess fashionable news, it might be talking about the Kardashians and Jay-Z and Beyonce and Hollywood, those kinds of things. And advertising news, I assume, might be a new product release from Apple Corporation. So if we're saying which is the most important, fashion, entertainment, as my interpretation, or advertising news, I would say they're both negligible, but my personal preference is probably for maybe advertising news, because I'm a bit of a geek and I like products more than following Hollywood personalities, stories, and all that. So, yeah, I hope I answered your question there. There we go. Just another way we can get around tricky questions. And a fashionable news, advertising news, as I said, I'm not entirely sure what the examiner wants by that, so I admitted it and went straight on. Do you think the government has the right to censor magazines? This is another difficult question. Some people would say that censoring is against democratic principles, and everybody has the right for freedom of speech. Then alternatively, you could say that some people don't have the right for freedom of speech because they abuse it and they might produce hate speech. So this is very difficult, and I think that it has to be taken on a case-by-case basis rather than making a sweeping decision, because at both ends of the spectrum, absolutes are usually dangerous. So this is very tricky and probably beyond my scope, to be completely honest with you. Yeah, so beyond my scope, or beyond me, is just a way to say, like, this is quite a tricky subject, and I've never really given it that much thought because it's not something that's like top of mind for me. So I'm just going to give you both sides of the argument and then probably summarize with something in the middle. Yeah, it also gives us the opportunity to compare, to contrast. Next question. Do you think everything we read in the magazines is true? So we've got on the tutorial in front of me, we've made a small mistake there. So everything we read in the magazines is true. Definitely not. I think the headlines and the content sometimes is twisted or maybe exaggerated just to sell more. For example, the other day I saw a magazine cover that said that Prince Harry was plotting a revolution against Prince William so that Prince Harry would be king. And this is ludicrous, and it's very unlikely that it's going to happen. And it was kind of like a reminder that we cannot take what the magazines say as gospel. So no, obviously we cannot take the magazine's text or content as truthful. So in that answer, I just gave a truthful example. Yeah, I honestly did see this front page with this bizarre story, and yeah, I think this is just reinforces the fact about what I said in the earlier podcast about immersion. If we can immerse ourselves into English, then we're going to be aware of these crazy publications that publish basically fake stories. There's another angle we could have gone with, fake news. But by being immersed, we're going to have more material to develop our answers with. We're going to have more information, more content, more vocabulary. So there we go. Let's move on to the next one. What's your full name? Can I see your ID? Where are you from? Do you work or study? What do you do? Do you like your job? What would you like to change it in the future? So what do you do? I don't know. I'm currently working in a fast food restaurant, and it's a temporary job. I got it about a year ago, just so I can fund my studies. Do you like your job? Yes and no. I like my colleagues. my job is, my boss, my manager, is quite helpful, quite humorous, and I did meet one of my best friends there. However, the actual specific job of frying French fries, making Happy Meals, making burgers, it's not the opportunity of a lifetime. And I think I'll be leaving it pretty soon. Would you like to change it in the future? Yeah, as I just mentioned, as you heard, yes, I would like to change it because it's not very challenging, and my studies are in marine biology, and this is basically my passion, and I'm looking forward to starting my internship on a boat in the Pacific Ocean next February. Okay, or whatever it is. I think I went a bit creative there. But anyway, I'm just giving you examples, and hopefully you'll have picked up on that technique that I'm using. I'm saying, for example, because, given a contrast, relating specific details. My boss, the supervisor, is humorous. I met my best friend there. La-di-da-di-da. Yep. Cue card. Describe an occasion suitable for giving money to children. In your opinion, please say, what is the purpose? When and where? How does money affect the attitude of children? Right. So I would like to talk about suitable occasions for giving money to children. I think it's suitable to give money to children, or even gift cards, when it's a celebration and with parental consent and with the parents there and everything open and honest and truthful. For example, a birthday party. I sometimes give money to my nieces and nephews because that's what they've specifically asked for. I would say, hey, Rex, what would you like for your birthday? He'd say, just give me some cash, Uncle Ben. And so the purpose would be basically as a present, because it's easier for him to go out and buy what he wants. The parents know we've got this agreement, we spend so much on the child, and they can get what they want to. So I guess it's twice a year, once for Christmas and once for their birthday, and perhaps with my brother's consent, and my brother's the father of the child, I'd say, hey, Rex has just graduated, is it okay if I can give him some money? Now, how does money affect the attitude of the children? Well, I think that it can have a negative impact if they are given too much. This is why I'm quite strict with my nieces and nephews, and it's only special occasions and only with the parents' permission. I've had friends in the past who didn't grow up to have a good relationship with money because they could get it whenever they want to. In fact, I remember one friend who had lots of friends, but they were only friends with him because he gave out sweets and basically bought his friends. And it turned out that he didn't have the best relationships when he grew up because of this factor. So that's my small presentation about giving money to children. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you heard my smile then at the end. So I went through all the points. I'm pretty certain I spoke more than 2 minutes there. And I gave a hypothetical example, I gave real world examples, and I did use the questions to structure it. And that's only because I didn't do my 2 minutes preparation. And I'm just doing it off the cuff, so to speak. And I only did it once. I said, okay, when is it? How does it affect the attitude of the children? I mean, for that specific fragment, I wouldn't have got any points because I took it from the cue card. However, it was just a way to carry on, sort of like my crutches, emergency point, emergency measure. So the discussion. Why do some people say that having more money creates power? I guess people say this because it's enforced in the movies and in the media that if you've got money, you can buy people, I guess. And also, if you've got a lot of money, you could actually employ them to do things. And I guess the more money you have, the more people you can employ to do your work, to implement your ideas. For example, George Soros is a famous Hungarian investor. He now lives in the US, but supposedly he's got some power because he funds universities, he funds lots of different political organizations, and he's extremely rich as well. So I guess because he's got more money, he's more powerful than the average Joe Bloggs and the average guy on the street. So there, I gave an example. I gave a summary as well. And it was quite straightforward. I thought it was a bit of a challenge, but once I warmed up, I got into it. Next question. Do you think that there is a relationship between money and power? Give us an example of that. This is very difficult to say, to be honest. There are plenty of examples in history of people with lots of money transforming that money into power. Maybe one example would be Jeff Bezos, who's the founder of Amazon. He's a billionaire. And since he accumulated all his wealth, he's also bought the Washington Post. Now, the Washington Post is a newspaper publication, and I guess you could say it doesn't fit with his portfolio of other companies. So the only reason maybe somebody could argue was that he's bought it for political ends, and I guess it comes with power. So in this respect, there's a strong link between money and power. And also, I guess a more straightforward example is that usually wealthier countries seem to be a little bit more powerful than poorer countries. This is quite a difficult topic, but if you just look in Europe, it's quite easy to see that Germany is more powerful than Greece, for example. And that's in one of the most democratic unions in the world, but it still shows that they've got more power because basically they've got more money. So I guess that would be an example of the relationship between power and money, both on a personal or on a human level and also on a geopolitical level. Wow, that was a tough one. But as I warmed up, I could think of a more rational example, but I think I answered it pretty well. It was a difficult topic, and yeah, I tried to get my ideas pretty clear in my head, but the reason why I could do this off the cuff, so to speak, is because my head's full of ideas. I'm immersed into the media, into the culture. I read most mornings. I'm reading about different things, about what's happening, and this gives me the vocabulary, the ideas, and relevant examples. So I'd strongly suggest you get into this habit. And the BBC is a good place for an almost partial view. So final one, and then we're finished. So let's have a look. What's your full name? Can I see your ID? Where are you from? Do you work or study? What do you do? So we've done all that before. Next one, do you use maps? Yes, when I was younger, useful phrase there, when I was younger, I used to read maps for my scouting trips. But nowadays, I just use the Google Maps on my phone, and To be honest, I'm becoming overly reliant on it, and I don't like it, but it's more convenient than having to think, unfortunately. So what types of maps do I use? Next question, what types of maps do you use? I use Google Maps, and there's another application that I use which is called maps.me, which lets me download cities and countries for maybe when I'm traveling and I don't have access to the internet. And I use them basically just to navigate around cities. So where did you learn to use maps? Well, when I was younger, we were in Scouts and we used a lot of maps, and we had to use them basically just to do the walks that the Scout leaders set us, because we were in different groups of maybe about 4 or 5 people, and they were like small missions around the Yorkshire Dales. And it was good fun, and it's a very useful skill. I think it's probably a skill disappearing nowadays. How often do you use maps? I would say almost on a daily basis, because nowadays Google Maps comes with a whole lot of useful information, like the metro times, tram times, and the fastest route, and also not just the schedules, but the journey times as well. So I guess now that maps have been enhanced by Google, I'm using it a lot more often. Do you ask others for help to get directions? I guess I do. Not that often, to be honest. I guess I'm a little bit of an introvert, and I prefer to just pull out my phone and use that rather than hassling somebody. Why or why not? I guess I don't like asking people because it's just easier to use my phone. And sometimes, because I live in a country that's not a native English speaking country, and I don't speak the language of the country where I'm at, also I'm forcing the person, if I go up to them and ask them in English, I'm forcing them to speak a language that they have no obligation to speak, because I'm not in England. So that's another reason, because of my situation where I am now. What maps are more useful, paper or electronic? I guess electronic ones are, assuming you've got a lot of battery, because the moment the battery dies, the phone is useless, and this is where paper or printed maps hold their own. This is where they become much more useful. So it depends on the circumstances. There we go. And that was a useful phrase to use, I think. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on the situation. Kind of a catch-all one, which doesn't force you into a corner to definitely say this one. Now then, the cue card. Talk about a recent event that made you happy. Please say, what was it? Where and when did it take place? How did you feel about it later? Right. I'd like to talk about a recent event that made me quite happy. This event was at my local yoga studio, and it wasn't an event for most people. I guess it was a small everyday occurrence, but for me it was a big event in my mind, because what happened was it was a 2-hour yoga class that I entered by mistake. I thought it was just a 1-hour one. And when it carried on going, I was like, oh my word, this is going to kill me. And it was at my local yoga studio. And it was quite grueling. It was rather difficult. And I kept looking at the clock thinking, when is this going to finish? And it wasn't until about 10 past the normal hour that I thought it would finish did I realize, oh no, there's another 50 minutes of this. And I was already struggling after 60 minutes. So when I realized I had another 50 minutes to go, I was very worried. And I was thinking about quitting, but I stuck at it and I really pushed myself. And during the actual class, it didn't make me happy, I must admit. But afterwards, I was very proud of myself because it was another milestone that I managed to reach. And after the class, even though I was exhausted and I felt physically demolished, destroyed, I was very happy and I was very proud. So that was a recent small personal event that made me happy. I hope you enjoyed it, my presentation. You see just a summary there. I gave a description, I gave an example, there's a personal anecdote. These are all useful devices that I would love you to take control of because they're going to help you expand your speaking vocabulary, improve your score. And if you want techniques on how to give anecdotes, how to give comparisons, and all these things that I'm giving, have a look at the Speaking Confidence course. Now, final point, discussion. Who was there with you? Well, there were about 6 other people in the class. I don't really know them. I see their faces every now and again, and sometimes we share a joke. However, there is a language barrier because I don't understand the language of the class, so I'm just copying people. But every now and again, there's a connection because we both kind of laugh at each other with maybe a pose or just some incident. So yeah, I would say that they were familiar people, but not people I know on a personal level. So can you see that even though there was nobody there that I know, I could still expand it and I could still offer an anecdote? Yeah, and it's a truthful anecdote, and yeah, like I won't get into it, but there's little stories there. So what makes you happy? Well, I think that doing sports makes me happy. I like the endorphins I get afterwards. Completion and progress and improving are probably some of my favorite pastimes, but these are the things that I get real satisfaction from doing, is from progressing and improving, and learning as well. I could have said chocolate, but recently I've started to cut out chocolate from my diet and other refined sugars, and I'm seeing an improvement. So yeah, I think it's more intrinsic values or immaterial aspects that are making me happy nowadays. Next question. When does an employee feel happy? Well, when I was an employee, I felt happy when I got recognition for doing the job right, and I was happy as well when I hit my bonuses or when I got my bonuses and I got my wage. But I think each person is different. I know some people do certain jobs just because they enjoy it. For example, in fact, when I was a teacher, sometimes I didn't actually need to teach the student because the class had finished, but I carried on because the student was enjoying it, I was enjoying myself, there was real progress being made. So as I said before, it depends on each person. Can money buy happiness? Once again, I'm going to have to say yes and no. I don't think it can make you happy, but it can buy the things that enable you to be a happier person. For example, a holiday in Disneyland is probably going to be more enjoyable than a holiday, I don't know, a weekend in the city in winter in a Northern European country. Yeah? So this is very tricky. I think it can help you to be happier, but it's not the essential thing. The essential thing for me is probably friends, family, relationships. So to answer your question, I don't think so, but it definitely is important. So once again, I'm answering the question, but I'm giving an alternative. Final question. Do you think money and happiness are related? Can you see here? The examiner is drilling into me the same subjects, the same questions. And I'm like, I answered that question 3 minutes ago. Didn't you hear me? This is what's probably going to be happening. But I'm not going to react. I'm just going to keep my back straight, keep looking at the examiner, being polite, and enjoying the process. This is a challenge now. So do you think money and happiness are related? It's very difficult to say. I think there is a connection there because money can buy you security and safety. And before you can be happy, I think we need to get the basics in place. Like, before you can start considering, playing a game with your friends, you need to have your home, shelter, food, your basic needs taken care of, and money takes care of those. So to a certain degree, they definitely are related, because unless you can get your food, shelter, and warmth, and your basic necessities under control, then you can't progress to the next level. So they are definitely related. Now, once you've got your basics in place, it's debatable whether money is going to have a big impact. I think it depends on the person. What I have heard is that money amplifies the person. So if the person is rather silly and then they come into a lot of money, then they're going to be even more silly. It's going to be exaggerated. Whereas if the person was maybe greedy before and they come into more money, they're going to be even greedier now. So I think, just to summarize, there's a definite relationship there, and it depends on your basic necessities. It also depends on, I guess, how balanced the person is. There we go. So, summarize that. I gave a small anecdote, maybe a little bit of wisdom in there. And that's how I would have answered that question. So after doing all this speaking now, obviously I'm a little bit tired, mentally fatigued, and I probably didn't answer that last one as well as I did the first ones. And this just goes to say that when you're in the exam, try and take this into account and go in there with a fresh mind. So if you need more help with your IELTS speaking, then have a look at the IELTS Speaking Confidence course. It's going to help you. It gives you techniques, gives you vocabulary and phrases, all of those which you can use in the course, in the exam. It's quite fast acting as well. And if you've got any questions, shoot us an email. If you need more feedback, have a look at the essay correction service, have a look at the online course. Got a lot of students, and by the way, in the next coming weeks, it's probably going to increase in price because we've just got a ton of students, and one of the teams asked for a pay rise, so it just makes sense. So we're going to be increasing the prices, so have a look at that, and all the best with your preparation, and take care. Thank you very much. Good luck with your IELTS prep.